Hello, and welcome to my oral commentary of William Shakespeare's world-renowned tragedy, Macbeth. My name is Jasper, and I will be exploring how actors portray different versions of Macbeth by investigating how they act and the techniques they use. The specific aspect that I'll be investigating is how different actors portray their characters. For this specific scene, I will be investigating how Ian McKellen and Kenneth Branagh portray Macbeth in his Act 5, Scene 5 soliloquy. I will be comparing the characteristics of Macbeth from the original play and Macbeth's characteristics as each actor's portrayal. In order for me to investigate character portrayal, I will need to focus on the actor's expression, his actions, and his voice as he speaks through his soliloquy. As these two actors deliver Macbeth's famous soliloquy, I will investigate similarities and differences and the significance of them. In essence, I will be comparing the characteristics that Shakespeare has given Macbeth through his play and the way that the actors decide to portray these characteristics. Act 5, Scene 5 is one of the final scenes of the play. Macbeth, the King of Scotland, finds out that Macduff and Malcolm has partnered together and are headed towards his castle with English troops. However, Macbeth discovers that his wife has also committed suicide due to the overwhelming guilt and psychological after-effects that resulted from killing King Duncan. As a response, Macbeth delivers this soliloquy, which shows his thoughts and reactions about Lady Macbeth's death and his reflection on life in general. At this point of the play, Macbeth's soliloquy shows that he has a complete change in his dynamic character. Contrary to the loyal hero image that Shakespeare portrayed in the beginning of the play, Macbeth has become an evil, cold-blooded traitor while also resembling a stereotypical villain. He is extremely prideful and he is willing to murder anyone who poses a threat to his sovereignty, illustrating his passion and ambition for power. In this first clip, Ian McKellen portrays Macbeth in the videotaped version of the Royal Shakespeare Company production in 1978. I want you to pay attention to the way Ian McKellen reacts to the news of Lady Macbeth's death, and the way he decides to deliver Macbeth's soliloquy. In particular, I also want you to focus on the way he uses his emphasis on words, his voice, and his expression.
Wherefore was that cry?
The Queen, my lord, is dead.
She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow. And tomorrow. And tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage. And then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
As you can see, Ian McKellen does not react really to Lady Macbeth's death. Upon receiving the news, he simply gazes around and states that she would have died soon after anyway. This shows Macbeth's complete change in his dynamic character as he becomes an evil and cold traitor. Despite a little acknowledgement for Lady Macbeth's death, he does not publicly display any care or affection for her. This is surprising because, knowing the relationship that Macbeth shared with his wife earlier in the play, he should have felt some remorse and be saddened by her death, but the opposite happens. As Ian McKellen continues Macbeth's soliloquy, he directs his gaze straight at the camera with a stony gaze, and he also has a dumbfounded expression, perhaps suggesting that he is unsure of how to live with his life, with his wife now dead. Furthermore, if you remember, there are very long and drawn-out pauses, about 2 seconds each, between each tomorrow. This gives the audience the impression that Macbeth is reflecting upon his life and his mistakes, as Ian McKellen's voice also starts to quiver and wobble a little bit. Ian McKellen also emphasizes the words tomorrow, today, and yesterday in the play, and Shakespeare's usage of these words in the play depict that Macbeth is talking and reflecting about the eternity of time, as he uses words that signify the past, the present, and the future. Ian McKellen also helps portray this to the audience by adding more stress to each of those words that represent time. Ian McKellen also adds emphasis to the important metaphor of life by putting stress on the words out and candle. This metaphor is important for the play because this shows Macbeth, who realizes that despite time being eternal, life eventually has an end and it is not finite, meaning that everybody will have to die at one point in time, just like the fire on a candle. In the production, Ian McKellen helps portray this to the audience by emphasizing the words out and candle. In this second clip, Kenneth Branagh portrays Macbeth in a much more recent production in 2013. Although the time periods are different and differ by about 30 years, the setting and stage are quite similar. Once again, I want you to focus on Kenneth Branagh's voice, the speed in how he delivers the soliloquy, and his facial expressions.
Wherefore was that cry?
The Queen, my lord, is dead.
She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow. And tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying
As you can see, opposite to Ian McKellen's acting, Kenneth Branagh delivers his lines at a much more rapid and faster pace. There is also some emphasis on the tomorrows, but other than that, the lines seem to be almost connected to each other. However, as the soliloquy reaches the candle metaphor, Kenneth Branagh starts to break down. This suggests that he wants to portray a Macbeth who at first seemed unemotional and unremorseful, but then later realizes that due to his overwhelming ambition, his actions has caused his wife to die from guilt. Kenneth Branagh also portrays a Macbeth that is seemingly regretful and where he still has a guilty conscience and he is worried about what might happen to him in the future. Another thing to notice is that after the way he emphasizes out and brief candle, his voice becomes more raspier and he appears to be choking up, as compared to the beginning of the soliloquy where he is speaking very rapidly. He also slows down considerably at this metaphor, as Kenneth Branagh wants to deliver this very important metaphor of life to the audience. This helps successfully convey Shakespeare's overall message in this soliloquy about how finite life is and how it must eventually meet an end. Kenneth Branagh also interestingly looks up as he delivers these few words, seemingly talking to God or someone of a similar status, as religion was also a very important part of life in Shakespeare's time. As Kenneth Branagh continues Macbeth's soliloquy, he reaches the end and starts to tear up as he states that life is a tale told by an idiot. This emotional change by Kenneth Branagh helps show that Macbeth finally has the realization that because he has committed so many traitorous crimes, he is the only one left standing as everyone else close to him has either left him or died. As Kenneth Branagh continues the soliloquy, he becomes so emotional that when he tries to say the last word of the soliloquy, it is inaudible and almost silent. His voice is also full of despair and misery, which is identical to the pain that Macbeth feels as he realizes that all of his actions and ambitious deeds that he has committed was all just a mistake, and that it has only brought him closer to his death. This also further shows Macbeth's dramatic change in character as he becomes much more pessimistic as he further realizes that life signifies nothing. As we see from both productions, there are large similarities, but also large differences in how the actors decide to portray Macbeth. The first thing we notice that stands out to the audience is the way both actors react to hearing Lady Macbeth's death. Although Ian McKellen remains cold, Kenneth Branagh eventually breaks down at the end of the soliloquy, indicating that the news of Lady Macbeth has affected his character. This further shows the theme of ambition and betrayal, as if Macbeth did not commit the murder, then Macbeth would not have to feel so much despair and suffering. Although Ian McKellen decides not to show the despair, Kenneth Branagh does a good job in showing the emotional state of Macbeth, and this emotion also helps show the pessimism that Macbeth has developed. The second important thing in both productions is the metaphor of life with a candle. Both characters do a good job on the metaphor, particularly Kenneth Branagh, as they emphasize very heavily and put stress on the significant words out and candle. This metaphor also plays a very important part in characterizing Macbeth as he reflects on the meaning of life and the realization of his situation after he has committed numerous of immoral deeds. However, the most significant difference is the way both actors decide to end the soliloquy. Ian McKellen ends his soliloquy with a dumbfounded expression, staring straight at the camera. Meanwhile, Kenneth Branagh ends his soliloquy in a much more emotional manner, tearing up to the point where he is unable to pronounce the last word, nothing. In both productions, we are able to see how both actors decide to portray Shakespeare's Macbeth. Although both of them have interesting and diverse portrayals and use interesting techniques, both actors portray Macbeth's characteristics fairly accurately to the original Macbeth by Shakespeare. Although both actors portray Macbeth fairly ambiguously, it is fair to say that as we watch both productions, Macbeth is a character that is unable to deal with the psychological consequences of his own immoral actions. His actions, which were driven by the corrupted power of ambition, results him in using very violent methods to get rid of his opposition, which thus foreshadows his eventual death at the end of the play. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.